Hi, in this video we're going to make a client-server system by connecting our LibreOffice Base Query by Example front end to the MySQL Server database backend. And so this is going to be done on a single computer, but the connection is exactly the same connection, the same way we would make this connection if we had put our MySQL Server on a different computer. As a matter of fact, if you have two computers, you're welcome to try it. One of the things you'll need to go to some extra steps to make sure of is if you are running, as is commonly the case these days, firewalls on the server computer and the client computer, you need to make sure that the port is open for outbound traffic on 3306 from the client and inbound traffic on 3306 for the server. The return connection usually doesn't have to be filtered. That's usually allowed if you've made the connection out. Anyway, those details are beyond the scope of what's required for the course, so I'll leave that to you to explore. Right now, we're just going to make a client-server connection, even though we're using the very same computer for both the client and the server. The point is, we're going to be connecting instead of to the HSQL DB, that is the embedded database usually used as the local standalone client computer engine for a simple LibreOffice database to connect to the MySQL database server, which of course could be scaled up to clusters and enterprise class, very, very large computers. And so everything that you're doing here on a small scale applies at a very large scale as well. All right, so let's start by opening up LibreOffice Base. And it asks me if I want to create a new database, open an existing connection, or connect to an existing database. And I do want to connect to an existing database, and in this case, I want to connect to MySQL. Now, for this to work, you need to have successfully done the steps to add the class path to the LibreOffice software that were described in week 1 of the course. So it's very important that you do that. If you haven't done that or you didn't do it successfully, now's the time to go back and revisit that, because that has to be in place for the rest of this to work. Also, remember that you need to check and make sure that your SQL Server is running. If you installed the MySQL Notifier, you can go down and check the MySQL Notifier. If you're running a Mac or a Linux operating system, check the documentation in week 1, the videos, to see what you need to do to see that MySQL is running. Okay, so I see that MySQL is running, and we're going to make a MySQL connection, and I say next. And then I have a choice of connecting using ODBC technology or JDBC technology, and what we're using this term is JDBC. That's why we need the J connector installed and configured, which should have been installed when you installed the MySQL database engine. And of course, you configure that to the class path as we mentioned earlier. And click Next. And we need database name that we're connecting to. For this exercise, we're going to use our old friend Tal. And the server, you could either call it localhost, which will resolve to the loopback IP address, or just use the loopback IP address, which by definition is 127.0.0.1. And the default port number, which I don't expect you've changed, is 3306, so leave that alone. And then let's test and make sure that the JDBC connector is working. And it is, so we say OK. And let's go to next. And now it asks for a username. So let's connect with root. And the password is required if you've taken the default settings when you configured the database and installed the MySQL engine. And say test connection. It will prompt you for the password. This is the same password that you created and were warned to make sure you remember, write it down someplace when you installed MySQL. And so let me go ahead and see if I remember mine. Let's see. I think that's it. And tell it OK. Great. And so that connected, that means we're going to have great success. If this does not pass, you need to resolve that first before going on. There's nowhere to go from here if you can't get a good database connect. And next. And shall we register this database for me so I can use that connection again in the future? Yeah, that's super. After the database file has been saved, what do you want to do? Let's open the database file for editing. And finish. And now we're going to save this ODB document. And I'm going to go over to Documents. And as I recommended at the beginning of the course, I've set up in Documents a folder called CIS 107. And I could create a folder to store this for whatever the assignment is I'm working on. So I'll just create a new folder and call it Assignment New. So whatever you would use, whatever the assignment number is, 13, 14, 15, whatever. And I'm just going to call it Assignment New. And I'll just call this TAL via JDBC. And say save. And here I am, and this is our familiar QBE engine and interface, and it looks just like it does if we were using the HSQL DB embedded, the local database, the small scale database that is provided for like single user use, native to LibreOffice, but we are in fact connecting to the tables and TAL on MySQL. And so we've now entered a larger world. Congratulations. We'll leave this video here because I think we've accomplished our primary goal.